Welcome into Attacking Third. We have breaking news out of the NWSL. A historic settlement has been reached with the NWSL stemming from the 2021 Yates reports of allegations of emotional and sexual misconduct. And the results say that the NWSL will create a $5 million restitution fund for players who experienced abuse. Plus, they have to implement sweeping reforms with new state-enforced safety protocols. Alongside Darian Jenkins and Sandra Herrera, I'm Lisa Carlin. We are chatting all about this breaking news that dropped earlier this morning. Darian, as a former player, someone who has been around so many different players, different teams throughout the leagues, what was your initial reaction to this settlement news breaking?
Just heartbreaking, because I'm thinking of the players that have had to relive this and have felt injustice since it's happened, even since the Yates report, and wanted retribution. I'm glad that they're getting it. I'm excited to dive into the details of this, because I think that's what's most important, is how are we taking care of the players that have gone through this, and how are we truly looking out for the future generations moving forward.
Yeah. If we're just doing initial thoughts, I think that's where I'm stuck with this too. And I know when stuff like this comes out, there's a lot to get through and kind of dissect, but you can't just help but sort of think of everybody who's been involved in this. And by everybody, I really mean the players and their bravery and their courage to sort of take that initiative and take control of the future that they wanted to see for themselves. So, you think of all the players and the names that were mentioned throughout so many of these investigations and all of these reports, whether it's from Kaya McCullough to Mana Shim and Sinead Fairley, and honestly, even like names that people forget a lot, the Jen Hoys, the Samantha Johnsons, the, Sakaya Bywaters, if you know, and really a lot of the players who unfortunately still kind of suffer in silence and did not want to put their names on things like this. So I think as far as initial reactions, you can't help but think of the players first.
Absolutely. Thinking of the players that have come forward in the past since the inception of the NWSL in 2013 up until continuous reports that are coming out, and just kind of pulling the curtain back as to everything that has been systemically happening within the league. And I think there's a big reaction to this because so many people, after the results came in 2021 and 2022, were like, okay, this is done and over, but that's not it. It's not it. There's so much more. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And this is now a step forward in the right direction to having resolution and to having checks and balances in terms of actually change that needs to be made. Rewinding a little bit just to kind of set the scene. In 2021, reports of abuse and sexual coercion across NWSL players, former and present, led to multiple investigations. One of them was under U.S. Soccer, led by former Attorney General Sally Q. Yates. And then the other one was a joint investigation by the NWSL and the NWSL Players Association, the PA. Now, following those reports that came from the Yates investigation, as we colloquially call it, following those investigations, 3 different attorney generals, Attorney General Brian Schwalb of DC, Attorney General Kwame Raoul of Illinois, and Attorney General Latitia James of New York, conducted a joint investigation. That started in 2022, and now 3 years later, the results of that investigation have been released. Some of these results include establishing a restitution fund of $5 million for the players, which reportedly U.S. District Judge Barbara Jones will aid and administer. And any unclaimed funds after 180 days will be donated to the PA Emergency and Charitable Fund. But in addition to that restitution fund, the results of this investigation also concluded that these 3 attorney generals are requiring the league to implement policy changes and protocols for player protection with direct oversight from the Office of Attorney Generals. And these are just overarching 2 big results, the restitution fund and the league implementing policy changes, Sandra. So what else can you tell us about some of the details of the results of this investigation?
I think the big headline is the restitution fund. I think that's the big thing. And I think some of these mandates, as you go through the bullet points of them, and combing through all of kind of the words, through all of the multiple releases that are out there, you kind of see some of these things listed out there, like the vetting processes of coaches, general managers, athletic trainers, player safety officers, mechanisms for players to report misconduct. Some of these things for people who have kind of been in the deep weeds of this all might sound familiar, and that's because, I guess, to give the league a minor bit of credit, that some of these things have already been in effect for NWSL kind of post 2021, post 2022, of the Yates investigations and of the joint team investigation between NWSL and the NWSLPA. So some of these things have already been in place for NWSL. I think what's important, I won't even say like unique, but what's most important about this particular bit of news in general, whether you're looking at just fixated on just the restitution fund or some of the other requirements that the AOG is putting in place, the Office of Attorneys General, is that it's serving more as mandates for the league. It's serving as things that there's going to be it's going to serve as a bit of a checks and balance for the NWSL moving forward. So yeah, it's great that maybe they've got some of these things in place already, but this still are mandated things that the attorneys general want to make sure that the league remain implementing league-wide.
It's safe to say that because of these league requirements coming out of this, it means that they weren't there before, right? Some of the quotes that I pulled out of some of these releases include rigorous vetting of prospective coaches, GMs, athletic trainers, and player safety officers, a policy that teams may not investigate themselves regarding coach misconduct and player safety. A lot of different things, Darian, are in this, including dedicated HR personnel and at least one mental health professional, different kinds of rules that are being implemented that now is being released.
Mental health professional, meaning they need a doctorate, not a mental health expert, because teams got away with that before. And I think you've seen that effect on how many players have had to take mental health leave because they've just struggled with the organization and their complaints and needs falling on deaf ears. And even just listening to you read that, Lisa, and reading these articles that are dropping, talking to you guys before we hopped on here, I think it's slowly kind of hitting me how devastating it is. Like, you play your entire life to become a pro athlete and how difficult the chances of that happening. And then you go into a situation where you're not educated to understand what abuse looks like. You look around at everybody around you and they've been told they need to tolerate it to maintain being a professional athlete and trying to live your dreams out. And it just created this awful system, this abusive system that where these people are brought in to coach and be leaders in these organizations. And it's so toxic and tragic. And I just am thinking about the players whose careers, their personal lives, their self-esteem, their money, ability to transition out of playing soccer is so deeply affected. And so I'm glad that now, legality wise, there's checks and balances here that hold every team, the league, and everybody accountable, that this is going to be reviewed. The complaints are going to be reviewed. I mean, even this last year, there's players that have come out and spoken about how they've been improperly treated. They've sent in, they've called the hotline, they've sent in complaints, they've tried to get investigations going, and it's fallen on deaf ears. Well, now I'm so happy you have lawyers truly looking into this that know what abuse looks like. So I'm happy that these steps are being taken. I can't wait to see what more happens, the more details we get out of this, and truly the retribution for the players that this has really fallen on. And I was thinking too about the players that are and have been scared to come out, that just opted to step away from playing and leave the league. And I hope that they feel that they can get some sort of retribution and help that they've needed, because I mean, how many people have fallen through the cracks due to this system?
And not just funds, right? There's so much more help that can be given to former, current players, of course, mental health leave, mental health professionals, but the funds that this now $5 million funds from the league being required is going to go directly to players, but there's also like counseling that needs to be provided to these players.
Absolutely.
And also understanding, Darian, it was really interesting. You started your thoughts with, you looked around and said, okay, are we accepting this? What's happening? It is now a legal requirement from the attorney generals that there will be annual training for all players and staff on how to prevent bullying, harassment, sexual misconduct, racism, retaliation, and also education on the reporting mechanisms available to these players, which to me seems like things that should have already been there.
That's what gets me, is that, I mean, I can just speak from my own experience. The team I got drafted to was North Carolina with Paul Riley. I mean, talk about an abusive, in every sense of the word, human being. And they were a glorified coach. And you look at the players on those teams, and it's difficult jumping into a situation like that. And you look around and you're like, well, I guess this is how it is if I want to make it, if I want to be on the national team and I want to win championships. And there was never an education as to, I mean, just as a humanity perspective, player side, front office side, coaches, what does abuse look like? And here is how you report it. And the report is not going to the team. The coach is not going to see it. We're actually going to have people with legal backgrounds check this out and investigate for you. And the fact that that's just now happening after everything, it felt like there was sort of a Band-Aid put over when that initial Yates was put out. It's just sad. My heart breaks for the players that you don't know what you don't know. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this education is implemented.
Yeah. One of the other steps that I found very interesting in this report is that the attorney generals are not just laying groundwork for what needs to change immediately. They are going to follow up with it, because the attorney generals must be provided moving forward with the results of annual and anonymous player surveys of coach conduct and team culture. Additionally, the NWSL is said they have to submit biannual reports to the attorney general for the next 3 years, detailing all the implementation of these settlement terms, compliance with the protocol changes of complaints against alleged misconduct involving player and staff safety. So, Sandra, it seems like from hearing directly from the attorney generals that they realize that this is not something that can just be fixed with a settlement that says, okay, we trust that you're going to do this moving forward, but there's going to be follow-up and there's going to be checking to make sure that all of these things are implemented.
Well, I mean, like, that's part of what trust is, right? Like that there's follow-up, that there's protocols in place. And I think, Darian already kind of alluded to these things and mentioned these things already, that there was a lot of things that happened out of 2021. There were multiple investigations that were done with reports that the public can go and you can go read those reports right now of the findings of those investigations, whether it was the U.S. Soccer Commission one with Sally Yates or the joint team investigation for the league, between the league and the Players Association. But we're in 2025 here, and we're talking about this headline of a settlement that is coming years later, like nearly 3 years later. And we live in this world where instant gratification is everything. And but sometimes there are processes that need to take place. And maybe that's what it looks like now, today, now that these processes of this investigation has sort of been done, this collaborative 3 state attorneys general who went and undertook this because of the players who came forward with this. And that's part of it. When I mentioned earlier the checks and balances of it all, it sort of felt like that, just kind of a Band-Aid, like Darian mentioned, where there's just sort of this operating in good faith, right? And that you can only hang on to that for so long. And this component of it all, where there is law behind all of these mandates, it feels like now maybe that trust can actually repair itself or be real, because that has been something that has been missing, I think, from this entire process. It's like, can you go through some of these things in this announcement today and say, okay, well, some of these things are in place. Like, sure, there are mechanisms for players to use to try to go ahead and report those things, but are all of them aware of it? Are they able to use it? And where is that feedback going? Does it fall on deaf ears? Like, there's still all of these question marks around some of these things that maybe are in place in the league already. And that was equally problematic, where you kind of have these years post investigations, but there's still that distrust. And something like this, with an actual checks and balances within the scope of the law, perhaps can finally provide a little bit of that clean slate that people have wanted for so long, whether it's players on the player side or even folks who are trying to do work behind the scenes in the league side. It actually provides legitimacy to a new beginning.
Attorney General out of New York, Latitia James, says, quote, "For too long, the hardworking and talented women of the National Women's Soccer League were forced to endure an unacceptable culture of abuse, harassment, and retaliation. This settlement sends a clear message that such misconduct will not be tolerated." NWSLPA President Megan Burke, she says, quote, "This settlement not only acknowledges those failures, but for the first time establishes enforcement mechanisms under the law to hold NWSL accountable and to prevent future harm. Accountability is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing commitment that never ends." Feels like, Dee, there was a bit of trust broken, but now it sounds like there are steps being made to repair the trust.
Absolutely. And love Megan Burke. I mean, no one can say it better than her. But yeah, there has never been trust between the players and the league. It's just fact. I mean, just until recently, you could get traded without knowledge of it. Just overnight, you could wake up and see a call from your agent and know that you've been traded. And I think, yes, having the law backing what the league is now saying that they're going to do and the steps that they're implementing to have the ultimate safety and well-being of the players as a priority is the first step to start to build that bridge. I think it's going to take years before it's actually connecting with the league. But knowing that they're going to be checked to make sure that every team and the league is following this new protocol, it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years. They have to give those biannual reports for years to come. So it's an important first step.
It's not just looking at the past and what's currently happening, but looking towards the future. NWSL Commissioner Jessica Berman did make a statement saying, quote, "We remain grateful to the many brave individuals who came forward to share their experiences, which has informed our approach to systemic reform. The NWSL is proud of the work we have done in partnership with the NWSL Players Association to set the standard for professional sports leagues." Commissioner Berman was hired by the NWSL in 2022. After all of these reports did come out. And the NWSLPA president, Megan Burke is the executive director, but Tori Huster is the president. She had a great quote that our producer just dropped to us saying, it wasn't leadership who fixed this. It was players who refused to accept silence as an answer. Powerful words coming from Tori Huster, who played in the league for a long time and still continues to represent the Players Association to help change be enacted. Darian, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences and talking with us about it. Sandra, thank you for your relentless reporting on this matter and trying to bring justice to the players. I appreciate you guys.
And thank you both for caring and covering this, not just today, but you guys have been covering this from even when I was playing and amplifying players' voices. So thank you guys.
Thank you to all the players who have continued to speak out and will not stay silent, refuse to accept silence as an answer. That's it. The NWSL has reached a historic settlement stemming from the Yates report of 2021, reports of allegations of emotional and sexual misconduct, resulting in the NWSL creating a $5 million restitution fund for players who experienced that abuse, plus implementing sweeping reforms with new state enforced and checked safety protocols. As this story continues to unfold and more details come out, of course, we'll have you covered here on Attacking Third. For Darian, Sandra, and Mark, I'm Lisa. This was Attacking Third.